Hey everyone, Gill Gross here, and it is time for another mailbag where I answer your hot takes, your questions, your observations, and ultimately your comments about tennis or anything else. About 24 hours ago, I posted on the YouTube community tab, got a good slew of comments as Shanghai has begun. There were some topical things, a lot of Jannik Sinner questions in this batch of questions. I'll go about an hour on this week's mailbag, and we will start with a comment that I think was one of the most liked comments. It is from Garrett. Is Jannik's mentality a factor in him being unable to make it to major finals, or is it purely his lack of stamina and other reason? I love your content. All right. For most of this year, or for much of this year, I should say, I answered a lot of questions about why hasn't Sinner won a big title? And now I suppose that'll shift to when's he going to make a big run at a major, which I suppose is ultimately a good thing for Jannik. But I will say a lot of the things that I was saying to the first question, which is that he hasn't really been an elite player for all that long, and these things tend to take time. Frankly, I don't think he's underperformed at majors. I don't. Based on where my expectation has been for Jannik, which is just based on the level of tennis that I'm seeing from him on a week-to-week basis, at no point has it been a situation where I'm like, all right, like he's ready, clock's ticking, when's he going to start making major finals? Now, maybe starting next year, I will have gotten to that point now that I've seen what he's done in 2023, which has been a breakthrough year, a career best year, a building block year where he's really kind of entered that not tier 1, but tier 2 level where, you should be potentially making some major finals, but he really hasn't been there. And then you look at his resume in majors this year, and what do you see? You have a 5-set loss to Stefanos Tsitsipas at the Australian Open when Steph was playing really, really good tennis. Tsitsipas was the favorite in that match. At Wimbledon, well, okay, let's not skip it. Roland Garros was a bad loss, and there's no way around it. He should not have lost to Daniil Altmaier. But after that match, if you read the comments on the internet and the discourse that surrounded that loss, there was a lot of, Sinner gets upset again. Jannik flops again. Oh, this is normal, Sinner. Then you actually look at the facts, and you would have realized that Sinner hadn't been upset early or prematurely at a major since like Wimbledon 2021 when he lost to Martin Fucsovics, which wasn't that bad a loss either, considering the things that Fucsovics has done over the course of his career in best of 5. So, okay, he had a bad loss at Roland Garros where I do think it was mental stuff, nerve management stuff, really bad day where it did seem like the pressure got to him in that match. Wimbledon, easy draw, bunch of easy wins, makes the semis, loses to Djokovic. All right, not much to say there. He shouldn't, he's not expected to beat Novak. He's not as good a player as Novak, and it's a bad matchup. Double whammy. U.S. Open, he is the most unlucky player in the entire draw. I had Sinner power ranked 4th. I had Zverev power ranked 5th. They end up playing in the 4th round. It's a 5-setter. The conditions are absolutely brutal on top of it, which I think was an advantage for Zverev. Sasha has really, really great conditioning. And for Sinner, it's been a work in progress, especially from a durability standpoint. All right, he loses a 5-setter where, honestly, I came away from the match less so disappointed in Sinner's performance, more so admiring the heart that he showed to push it to 5 because he was cramping at I think I'm remembering this correctly. He was cramping in the second set, ended up playing 3 more hours of tennis at a pretty high level. So my response to why has Sinner been unable to make major finals is, well, he hasn't underperformed in majors, largely speaking. He will be ready to make major finals probably next year, if I were to guess. But up until now, what's been lacking is simply he's been underdeveloped as a player. in terms of like, why isn't he able to beat Tsitsipas, who was playing at his best in January, or Djokovic at Wimbledon, or Zverev at the U.S. Open? There are certain improvements that he needs to, and I think we'll get to it later in the mailbag. There are certain improvements that he needed to make in his game before he reached a level where he's good enough to make a major final. The serve needed to get better, needed to get a little bit more consistent off the ground, incorporate more angles, more net play, more drop shots, better volleying, better movement, better durability. Like, there were so many things that needed to get better. He just simply wasn't good enough. That's really the answer for me. And now I think he is good enough. So let's give him a little bit of time to unlock that milestone. I think it's coming sooner rather than later. All right, next one from Sloppy Gamer. Hi, Gill. Bit of a strange one, but which players would you pick to build the most unorthodox player of all time? Looking at things like forehand, backhand, serve, volley, mentality, or even celebration and fashion choices. Thanks for all the great content. It's a fun one. 17 likes, a lot of interest in this. We'll go shot by shot here, shall we? Forehand. I think for forehand, it's got to be a two-handed forehand, right? Just considering what a forehand is conventionally, I feel like you got to go with the two-handed forehand. So Fabrice Santoro would probably be my pick for most unorthodox forehand. You have a Monica Niculescu, who basically refused to hit topspin on her forehand. That's pretty unorthodox. Gulbis, and I wrote some down because I didn't want to forget people. You know, Gulbis had the left hand thing going. You know, the salute with his left hand. And Florian Mayer had the longest forehand swing you could make. Like, you cannot swing any longer than Florian Mayer. You got also Peng Shuai, who just kind of didn't really she was so strategic and so disruptive with it, but she almost just wouldn't hit it a lot of the times. Like, she would just bunt it. Not like Adrian Mannarino bunt it, because Mannarino, we know the story with him, super loose tension, and even though it looks like he's not swinging, the ball actually goes pretty fast off of his racket. Peng Shuai would barely hit the ball. Her backhand was a little bit more normal, a little bit more conventional. So that's my list for forehand. I guess it's a long list. For backhand, I think you got to go Jim Courier. And what was so unorthodox about Courier's backhand, it wasn't just this, but it was mostly the spacing. You watch Jim Courier hit a backhand and you almost want to scream get out of the way! It's going to hit you. Because the ball would come so close to his body. And especially, when he hit it open stance, it literally looked like it was almost going to hit him in the chest. And then he would just kind of fight it off. And I don't know, a lot of people used to compare it to a baseball swing. I don't know if I really understand where that's coming from, but it certainly looked strange. It was visually jarring. Good enough to win majors, though. And then I think Alexander Vukic almost has a bit of a modern version. Not apples to apples, but I do see a little bit of the Jim Courier backhand in Vukic's. Cam Norrie deserves a mention here. Norrie's backhand is pretty one of a kind. I mean, the way it's hard to even describe how it's unorthodox. I almost need to study Cam Norrie's backhand to really pinpoint what's so strange about it. But the arms are certainly extraordinarily straight. I mean, both of them. Usually you'll see maybe one arm kind of go to extension, but the fact that both of Norrie's arms stay so straight, and there's very little wrist action in Cam Norrie's backhand. Serve, you have Federico Del Bonis with the absolutely absurdly high toss. Just mind-blowingly high. You have Alexander Dolgopolov, who has the fastest serve, the fastest pacing that you'll ever see. I think the ball leaves his hands and he basically hits it immediately. Like, there's no ball toss. There's just, it's almost like he's throwing the ball into his racket. The timing of it is just wild. But there is a serve that's similar to Dolgopolov in the timing category that's actually weirder. And I wanted to get an opinion. I texted Jan Michael Gamble on who's the weirdest serve, and he gave me Karsten Brasch. So look that up. Karsten Braasch. Karsten Brasch. He has maybe the weirdest serve ever, because it's like the timing of Dolgopolov, but the preparation has a lot of funky stuff going on, where Dolgopolov, everything looked pretty normal until he actually tossed the ball and hit it. Kenin, wild. The fact that Kenin is looking down when she tosses the ball, that is absolutely insane. I mean, that is craziness. And I also do not want to let Mackie McDonald off the hook. Now, you're probably saying, Gil, what are you talking about? Mackie McDonald doesn't have that weird a serve. Mackie McDonald needs to be mentioned in this conversation because he puts the tennis balls in his right pocket, which is psychotic behavior. Absolutely psychotic behavior. So, I mean, if any of you play, McDonald is a right-handed player. So when he serves the ball and misses his first serve, he actually needs to transfer his racket into his left hand just to take a ball out of his pocket and then switch it back up so that he can bounce the ball and then serve. I cannot believe that is what he does. I actually firmly believe that I keep my phone in my left pocket because of tennis, because I'm just used to, I don't know, it just feels like the more active pocket. The right pocket feels like the pocket that I'm not going to go to as often. And I think that's because of the tennis. All right, what else do we got? Volley. A lot of people have crazy looking volleys. I don't know, maybe Medvedev. Medvedev on the forehand volley is pretty slappy and swingy, and it's like, what are you doing there? Swiatek on the there's a lot of women's players who have that two-handed backhand volley. Brooksby on the men's side, Brooksby's backhand volley is pretty bizarre. Mentality, you got to go Ostapenko. Like the fact that where do you even begin? Next one from SJ, also got a lot of likes. Hey, Gil, just some fun ones for you to answer to the best of your memory. Which Nadal-Medvedev final was better, AO 2022 or US Open 2019? I've been rewatching USO 2019, and I was pretty surprised by the level of both of them. I feel like Nadal was in such good form, and Medvedev was being so stubborn that match, randomly learning how to serve and volley effectively to stay in it. It was so different from modern Medvedev, who is great, but in different ways. Still, AO 22 had it beat for me for drama and the epic fifth set. It was one of those matches that absolutely peaked in the fifth set, whereas 2019 kind of lost some steam as both players fatigued. Yeah, I completely agree with your assessment. While it was surprising and amazing to see Daniil against kind of what you would think, given the context of that match, fourth or fifth set, especially in the way that he did, the fifth set wasn't all that amazing. I mean, there certainly weren't that many twists in it. I remember the break of serve from Nadal was kind of a loose game by Medvedev, and that was kind of all she wrote. Whereas Australian Open 2022, while both of them didn't play great at the same time for most of the match, they certainly did in that fifth set, and it was really an awesome finish to that match. And similarly, it was kind of an incredible turnaround by Rafa. Just like it was an amazing turnaround by Medvedev at the US Open, it just meant less because he didn't even end up winning the match. Okay, and then there's two others. Which Federer-Djokovic Wimbledon final was better, 2014 or 2019? Hot take, but I'm going 2014. The quality in that match was far above 2019 and more consistent in my opinion. It's a bit underrated as far as all-time great matches go, and in my opinion is one of the best Federer-Djokovic rivalry, with only RG 2011 coming close. Yeah, I see what you're saying. And I mean, I can buy that the quality was better in 2014. It's certainly a match that probably doesn't get enough recognition, especially because it was a turning point for Djokovic. I mean, from that point on, Novak was someone who really handled the occasion of major finals as well as anybody we've ever seen. Whereas up until that point, that was certainly not the case. Quite the contrary. Novak was losing a lot of major finals up until this match, where I think with Boris Becker in his corner and this win over Federer in a 5-set Wimbledon final, this kind of gave him the confidence to kind of do what he ended up doing in major finals for what has been kind of the remainder of his career. That said, there's a reason 2019 has left the legacy that it has and 2014 hasn't. I mean, the fact that by 2019, Djokovic was not far behind Federer, and there was really a widespread recognition that this match was going to be essential when it came to, who finished with the most slams when it was all said and done. That was the feeling at the time. Now, would that have been the case or not? You really never know. And frankly, probably not. But at the time, it felt like that. You had, the crowd, I think, recognizing that and recognizing that it may have been Federer's last chance. And, there's always been a love affair between the Wimbledon crowd and Federer. We know what the crowd was like on that occasion. The way that Djokovic responded to that and handled that was supremely memorable. The fact that it went kind of into extra time in the 5th set. Yeah, 2019, 2 match points. Okay. 2019, rightly so, is the match that left a legacy, more so than 2014. So, you can give me quality, but I would still counter that 2019 was a better and more epic experience as a viewer. And then the last one, which Djokovic-Nadal match was better, Wimbledon 2018 or RG 2013? And SJ says, this one is splitting hairs for me, but Wimbledon 2018 was just slightly more consistent in quality, in my opinion. I didn't include AO 2012 because I feel like that's pretty clearly the best of the Djokovic-Nadal saga. I don't have a strong opinion on this one. I really don't. But I don't know. Isn't the fact that Wimbledon 2018 was disrupted by the curfew and you had that whole roof controversy, doesn't that take away from it just a little bit? Like, I agree that it's really the last time we saw athletic prime Djokovic and Nadal go at it, both really be at the highest level at the same time. It was a great match. I'm the quality of 2018, man, it was special. But 2013 is probably right there. And, storyline wise, I would call them pretty much even as well. I think Novak trying to take down Rafa on court Philippe Chatrier, it's always kind of a special thing. And he was really close there. It took some pretty unbelievable, level. It took an unbelievable level, I should say, by Rafa in that 5th set to get through it. Yeah, look, I'll take your word for it. I don't have a strong opinion on that one, but which one did you like? You liked Wimbledon 2018. Yeah, I do feel like, though, that the discourse around that was hurt by the whole fact that it was interrupted and played in 2 parts and played under the roof in a kind of controversial fashion. All right, Alex Spencer says, Peng Shuai, curious why her name hasn't come up in any of the media coverage of the resurgence of the Chinese swing. I am surprised, and it saddens me how quickly she's disappeared into irrelevance. Yeah, I wanted to include that one, or this one, I should say, as to not make the problem that you are pointing out any worse. It is worthy of coverage, as the WTA returning to China after, 2 years ago saying that they would not. Steve Simon said that we will not return to China unless we are, 1, able to meet with Peng Shuai, and 2, I don't know if it's the government, but basically that there was an investigation into the claims that Peng Shuai made against the high-ranking Chinese official, Zhang Gaoli, I believe was his name. Those things did not happen. Now, the second request, or the second demand, I should say, or condition was so far-fetched. That would never happen. But they said it. Steve Simon said it. And since then, obviously, the criteria has changed. So this is what he said. There was some media coverage of this, but it hasn't come, at least not that I've seen, in the last couple weeks. It came when the WTA first announced their calendar, which included these Chinese events. Associated Press did an interview with Steve Simon. Simon said, quote, "What has changed?" So he was asked, what has changed from when you said that to now? He said, quote, "What has changed with it is that we have received assurances from people who are close to her that we've been in contact with, that she is safe and living with her family in Beijing. First and foremost, her safety is the priority, and we do have assurances that is the case." Simon also said that he hopes, quote, "more progress can be made by returning to China because the current strategy of staying away, quote, doesn't make sense." All right. I mean, essentially, he, softened the criteria. It went from we want to meet with her and we want an investigation into her claims into, okay, as long as she is safe, which essentially means, she's not in a prison cell. She has at least some semblance of freedom, although I don't believe that freedom includes the ability to speak freely about this incident or any of her claims. Certainly not. Certainly that is not included in her freedom. But, she has freedom of movement, freedom to hopefully live some sort of a normal life at least. And I guess that was enough where, morally Steve Simon was able to say, okay, we are okay with coming back, I suppose. But obviously the WTA, financially, I think there are a lot of signs that they are not in a comfortable place when it comes to the financial books. Okay. I mean, the last time tax returns and, what we're able to see in terms of revenue and income and those things, that is always delayed. But in 2020, we do know that the picture was very, very ugly. And Tumaini Carayol of The Guardian did also write a good piece. Again, at the time, the WTA, so this was back in April when the WTA announced their calendar. So here's what he wrote. He said, "The combined effects of COVID and the absence of the Chinese swing are reflected in the massive hole in the WTA's balance sheet for 2020. Its most recent tax filings, after making revenues of $109 million with an operating loss of $1 million in 2019, its revenue in 2020 was $37 million. I'm not giving you the exact numbers. With an operating loss of $16.5 million. So basically, WTA lost $1 million in 2019, lost $16.5 million in 2020. We don't have any numbers past that point, but you would assume that that $16.5 million, while it may have gotten better in 2021 and 2022, in all likelihood, in fact, I can almost, you could almost guarantee that it is not back to where it was in 2019, which is $1 million, because the main revenue generator for the WTA has always been, and same for the ATP, it is the finals. It is the year-end championship. That is the financial workhorse of the tour. Obviously, pre-2020, you had a very lucrative deal with China in regards to that year-end championship. But in the past couple years, not only has that China money gone away, but the WTA has literally had to subsidize that event. So it goes from a massive money maker to something that probably doesn't make any money at all. That's a huge problem for the WTA's balance sheets. And I think big picture, they've been in financial trouble. I don't think that the WTA sells equity and takes venture capital money as they did earlier this year. I don't think they do that if they are in a place where, financially, they don't need an influx of cash, right? You do that when you need cash. And obviously they sold 20% of their ownership stake to CVC, which is a venture capitalist firm, for $150 million. Like that, a move like that suggests that the WTA is strapped for cash. So, that is, I think, a big reason for why they kind of softened their stance on Peng Shuai. And that's the situation that we find ourselves in. I know I didn't give you much of an opinion on this. I don't really have one prepared, to be completely honest. I don't know what else I can add to it, but I hope that I was able to give you all of the information and kind of paint a picture of the current situation. All right, let's go to the next comment. It is from Osmanazir. All right, hi Gill. This comment got 12 likes last time, so I hope to see it covered this time. I did notice that, and I am going to do that. All right. Just wanted to reflect on the impressive runs of Karen and Roman in the recent tournaments and share some opinion I stumbled across over the socials related to the best nation in men's tennis right now. Do you think we can all agree that Russia's got the most solid and well-balanced men's team? You have Medvedev and Rublev, who have always been contenders for the biggest titles and have been one of the most consistent players on tour for the last 4 years. Khachanov, who's been making big strides in Grand Slams and has been playing consistently well since last year, so error-free when he's catching his momentum. Karatsev, who's capable of beating anyone when he's in the right move, and now Safiullin, who has been beating top 20 players every now and then. By the way, Australian Open Junior champion in 2015. Who knows what he would have achieved with no injuries. And he's become even more dangerous this year. It's noteworthy that Russia won all the team tournaments in 2021, both ATP Cup and Davis Cup. Looks like would have swept it all up this year had their country not been banned from playing those team tourneys. Do you concur with that? What do you make of the Russian tennis generation of this era compared to the previous one? And would you go ahead and say they are actually the strongest one? All right, I like these conversations. I wish Davis Cup was, in a place where you felt like it was the purest and best representation of who the best tennis countries were. I wish it was in a place where it was prestigious enough and convenient enough for all the players, where everybody played it and we kind of had these conversations more often. But because I like these conversations, I think they're really fun to have. Russia's got 6 top 100 players, as you mentioned. They have 2 top 10 players in Medvedev and Rublev. They have a borderline top 10 player in Khachanov. I think with the injuries, had he not been injured this year, I think he might be in the top 10, probably in a number 9 spot, number 10 spot, but you get the picture. There's a little bit of youth in Shevchenko. Yeah, I think they have the best Davis Cup team, but let's talk about the other contenders here. You have Italy. Italy's got 5 top 100 players. You have an elite top 10er in Jannik Sinner. You don't have anybody comparable to Rublev because Lorenzo Musetti is not that. Berrettini, who's kind of fallen off. If you asked me this same question in 2021, I would have told you that along with Russia, you have really good competition in Italy with the trio of Sinner, Musetti, and Berrettini. It's looking a little bit shakier now. It's looking like Russia still has the edge in the upper echelons. But Arnaldi, breakout year. Sonego, good solid veteran. And if you look at in the rankings, 101 to 200, Italy's got 12 players. I don't know if that's a product of Italy's superior talent in the next generation, the next wave of talent, or if it's a product of having so many opportunities for Italian players to play challengers in their home country. I'm not really sure at this time. But Russia, comparatively, has 2. 100 to 200, Russia 2, Italy 12. Just something to keep in mind. And then you have USA. They have 10 top 100 players. Nobody's got more. They have 7 in the top 50. I don't think anybody's got more. They have 4 in the top 20. That is the best on paper. Nobody can compete with that. Obviously, it's just lacking that that number one. You know, they don't have a Sinner and they do not have a Medvedev. But they deserve to be in the conversation, certainly. Still, I think from a single standpoint, you put Medvedev and Rublev on a team and Khachanov on a team, that's the best. You can't compete with that. The only way the other nations are able to make up for it is probably in the doubles, where I don't think Russia has anything super solid going for them in the doubles department. Spain has kind of fallen off. In the, 2008 through, honestly, it might go back further than that. Maybe back to like the Juan Carlos Ferrero days. I would say like from 2003 to 2015, you really couldn't beat Spain in this conversation. But you look at them now, obviously the Nadal has been, the Nadal figure, the elite player has been recycled, and you do have that elite player for Spain in Carlos Alcaraz. But after that, you have a big drop-off. You have Davidovich Fokina, and the only other top 50 player is Roberto Bautista Agut. And you look at the young guys for Spain, I don't know, under 25 years old, only Davidovich Fokina and Alcaraz. I mean, 26-year-old Bernabe Zapata Marias, 26-year-old Jaume Munar. There's not a lot on the horizon. I'm going to go to 101 through 200. Pedro Martinez is 26. Pablo Llamas Ruiz is 132 in the world at age 20. I've seen him play once. I don't remember. I don't really remember what I thought of his game, though. I completely forget. So yeah, that's the only guy on paper, Pablo Llamas Ruiz, who is someone who we can be talking about clearly next year, the year after, as a next gen guy. So Spain has not been able to kind of maintain its stature as an elite tennis nation on the men's side. By the way, shout out Safulin. This comment was last week, but Safulin crushed Zverev. I didn't make him the dark horse because I'm like, you got Murray first round, you got Zverev second round. It's not a good draw, so I won't make him the dark horse. Should have made him the dark horse. Next one from Mean Cow. I think I butchered that. Mean Chachu? Mean Chow? Okay. Gill, fall tennis season can often feel like a drag, but I've always loved the Asian swing, especially Shanghai, with the atmosphere and all the top players turning up, looking fairly motivated in the past. This has resulted in very high-quality tennis and matches. If you look at the past 10 editions, 2010 through 2019, the winners have been Murray, Djokovic, Federer, and Medvedev. Why is Shanghai less wild than Bercy? I will give you theories, but I'm not really sure. But I'll give you theories. I don't know. There might be something about indoor tennis. Bercy's a little bit later, so it does come after, which means players are just a little bit further along in the slog, in the drag. They are a little bit closer to vacation. But I think there's something about being indoors that can be a little bit more draining, can become a little bit more of a drag for players. I think, I'm not positive, but I do think that comes into play. I have never been to China, but players spend a lot of time in Paris every year. They spend plenty of time in Europe, plenty of time. Could it be something about Shanghai? It feels fresh. It feels exciting. It feels new. It feels big. It's a big metropolitan market. Could that be part of it? And yeah, I also love the crowds. I think Shanghai has great crowds. Court speed, really, really quick. I think Federer has appreciated that in the past. I think Djokovic has appreciated that as well. So, I don't know. Yeah, I would say outdoor factor, maybe a little bit more exciting than Bercy. I don't hear great things about Bercy. Again, I've never been. I just don't hear great things. And it's a little bit sooner after the U.S. Open. This one from Cristiano Ronaldo. Do you see any similarities between Sinner's game and Djokovic's game? I've definitely answered this before, but it got 18 likes. Yeah, I certainly see some, but I don't think they are extremely similar. So body type, I definitely see. You know, they have a flexibility, an elasticity. They like the open stance backhand, certainly with the double hander. The return of serve, I think they actually have similar biomechanics on the return of serve. I don't want to say technique because I'm not really talking about what they're doing, you know, with their racket head or their wrist. I'm really talking about their, you know, the rest of the body and how they split step and kind of how they kind of throw themselves at the ball. You know, both of them with the very kind of elastic, long, you know, big kind of step overs on the forehand and I don't know. I think both of them do a great job being explosive out of their split step to return serve, and they tend to get a lot of pace on their return of serve. I mean, ultimately, though, they're different. Like, and I know, you know, their technique in some ways can resemble body type, two-handers. They both have the head racket. I get all that, but when you really boil down to like, why are they good and what do they do? It's different, right? I mean, Sinner, consistency isn't even a strength for Sinner. Sinner misses a whole lot. It's power. It's a guy who likes to attack, offense, big power. That's what Sinner's game is first and foremost predicated on. Now, yes, he's trying to get better in the other stuff to become a more complete and well-rounded player, but that's not Djokovic. Djokovic is a great defender. Djokovic is extremely consistent. Djokovic, you know, he doesn't miss a lot. He keeps the ball really deep. He's steady. So I think like a lot of it is more visual stuff with Djokovic and Sinner, where if you actually boil it down to what are these guys good at? How do they like to win points? And that's the big one, right? If you're going to say, what is a style in tennis? If I'm teaching someone who doesn't know anything about tennis, about the sport, I'm explaining, so players have different styles. Oh, what does that mean, Gill? It means that there are a couple of different ways to win points, and different players prefer to win points and are good at winning points in different ways. And if you look at it like that, Djokovic and Sinner, they're not very similar. They're not. Next one from Cross Court Tennis. I know you touched on how good Sinner's return has been in the final recap, but when I was watching the match, what really stood out to me was the absurd consistency with which he rushed Daniil going deep through the middle, as Daniil isn't in his usual rally position. That's the one moment he's vulnerable, / gives up a shorter ball, and Sinner, on the second serve return especially, ripped it through the middle 9 times out of 10. I guess he didn't break, but I give Daniil credit in the clutch moments. My question is, does this mean Sinner's pain against players who absorb from behind the baseline are over? Will the head-to-heads against Medvedev and Zverev turn around? This is a fantastic tactical comment and question. I have covered this in the past, but the answer to this is yes. One of the essential pieces of the puzzle, if you're game planning against Zverev and Medvedev, is you really want to attack their serves. You want to be aggressive on the return, because that is the moment where, yes, you're right, they can't cover the court like they can in rally, right? They are not in good defensive position because they're on top of the baseline, and they are recovering out of their service motion, which is for all players a difficult thing to do. But I think especially for Medvedev, I don't think Medvedev really pops out of his motion as quickly as maybe some others are able to, which affects his ability to play well on the +1 as well, even offensively. But in this case, we're thinking of, what can he do defensively? There was a point, I mean, just to kind of drive this home, there was a return winner that Sinner hit in this final against Medvedev that landed like 2 inches away from his left foot. Like Sinner hit it right down the middle. Literally, right down the middle. Winner. In what other scenario can you hit a winner against Daniil Medvedev when he is standing in the middle of the court and you hit the ball up the middle? No other scenario. And that just underscores what a unique situation you have a Medvedev or Zverev in when you attack their serves. You're right. They cannot do the things defensively that they can do in rally. Not to mention, they both have attackable second serves, each in their own way. Zverev doesn't hit any spots. It's very, very predictable. There's no kick, so it's fast, but you kind of know it's just going right into the middle of the box, and you can just punish it because of that. And for Medvedev, when he does hit his kick serve, it is slow and underpowered, and it doesn't kick very much. However, you ask me kind of a larger question here, which is Sinner's pain over against Medvedev and Zverev? And, for that to be the case, he needs to do a little bit more than just this. It's never really going to be one thing when you are looking at a, stylistic issue like the one that Sinner has had against Medvedev and Zverev, and I would throw in Novak Djokovic as well. It's not just going to be attacking the returns. I think that's going to be the part of the equation that actually comes most naturally and comes easily to Jannik Sinner. It's the other things that are also going to need to be developed in order to get through their defenses, which are also going to need to come together. Some of these things did come together against Medvedev in Beijing, but it's going to be improved volleying and more frequent net rushing, better use of the drop shot, opening up more angles, which, by the way, Sinner did very well. Especially, I loved when he ran around his forehand, hitting the short angle on the inside out. That was terrific. I didn't talk about that. But when you go inside out and you break the baseline against Medvedev, he loves that. He always loves to redirect down the line, and you just left more open court on that backhand down the line for Medvedev. But if you actually take pace off and just roll it inside out, break the sideline instead of the baseline, now you make Medvedev move hopefully diagonally more inside the court, and you make him hit his backhand from a low contact point. He's vulnerable on the next shot. He has a lot of trouble protecting his backhand if you're able to roll it short on your inside out forehand. So it's things like that. Angles, drop shots, volleys. The power can still be a part of it, but it can't be only power. You will not hit through those guys. Sinner did a really good job of constructing points in a way where he's not just blasting the ball, not trying to blast the ball right through him, which is an impossible task. Some things were pointed out to me also in terms of, I talked about the consistency that Sinner brought. I talked about the fact that he wasn't missing a lot of forehands. I talked about the fact that his shot tolerance was able to kind of meet Medvedev's shot tolerance in a way that it wasn't in Miami. But I guess I neglected to kind of get to the why here. There were certainly, somebody tweeted at me and they said, look at the RPM difference. Way more RPMs by Sinner in Beijing, average RPMs, than Miami, which tells you he was not flattening out as often. He was hitting, just heavier spin, which means, to me, that's just working the point more, playing a little bit safer. When you hit those short angles, those are not flat balls. Those are spinny balls. Just trading more, taking some pace off at times. So it all needs to come together. And if it all comes together, he'll start beating Medvedev and Zverev and Djokovic more often. Next one from Joseph. Hi, Gill. Thanks for your unique and insightful analysis. Can you comment on why players who have a great first serve, such as Zverev, do not always have a great second serve? What makes a good first serve versus second serve? Well, I mean, the fundamental difference is you're hitting a different spin. There are a lot of technical differences if you're comparing, flat serve to kick serve that are pretty significant. And there are areas of technique or technical deficiencies that can be deficiencies on one type of serve, but not the other. So like, for example, if you're someone who opens up your hips too early or too much, right? That's bad, right? You want to keep your hips closed so that you can rotate. But this is just one example. If you are someone who opens up your hips super, super early, you're still going to be able to hit a good slice serve, but good luck hitting a kick serve. In order to hit a kick serve, you have to keep your hips closed, right? That's just one example. It's just it's different serves, and it doesn't always go together, and there are some players who have a good second serve and they don't have a good first serve. If everyone was just hitting kick serves and that was the only serve that existed, we would not be talking about Carlos Alcaraz needs to improve his serve. We'd be saying it's great. Alcaraz has a great serve. End of story. But that's not where we're at, right? We're in a position with Alcaraz where, okay, the kick serve's good. Slice serve, flat serve needs work. So it really goes both ways. But yeah, just because you're good in one area doesn't mean you're good in the other. From Mr. Ed. My main question this time is about the Australian Open. What do you think about the extra day added on a Sunday? Good or bad? On one hand, it's an extra day's tennis, but it also spreads the matches a bit thin, and the French Open first Sundays have not been great. I don't think this will fix the late night finishes problem. Yeah, for Roland Garros, that first Sunday hasn't done much for me. I don't like it in general. I think the start of a tournament should be a goddamn celebration. It should be an occasion. It should feel like a bonanza. It should feel like the Christmas morning. The first Sunday, the kind of watered down first day, that ain't it. That ain't it. Obviously, the first round of a major, very special day in tennis. Never do we get so many matches. And, you add a third day, it waters that down a little bit. I can't say I like that. Now, what I do want and what I do like is for, Sunday or that first weekend to not be a wasted day. I got to say the U.S. Open, I think, just nails it in this department. I went to the U.S. Open on Sunday, and this hasn't always been the case, but it is now. With the festivities that they have, with the fact that all the vendors are open and the way that they have publicized and marketed the U.S. Open and said, this is fan experience week. Come to the grounds, even if it's Sunday. And the grounds are packed. Everybody's just watching practice and having a great time for free. That is a good use of Sunday. You get anybody who can't afford to attend the tournament, and I know it's expensive, but anyone who can't afford to come or for some reason just can't attend during the week, and then by the time they can come, it's Labor Day weekend and the ticket prices are crazy. Come on Sunday. It's free. Free. And you get to watch the best in the world, all over the grounds, kind of practicing, and you can eat and drink and have a good time all the same. So I prefer that. I prefer that model. I'll say that. From Gene. What are your thoughts on Garcia's disappointing season so far? And why do you think her highly aggressive style and net rushing failed her really since the WTA finals run in 2022? Is it that players have started to figure her out, or are there other reasons? Thanks for the content as always. Yeah, look, I've said this before, but I really enjoyed, I don't want to put it in past tense. I enjoy watching Caroline Garcia at her best, and I'm disappointed with how things have played out this year for that reason. I thought that the path of her career was going to make it so that, okay, she really wasn't ready to be a top player emotionally and mentally when she did it back in 2018 or something like that. And she had her kind of downward spiral. But upon returning to the top of the sport, I thought that she will have been that much more mature, that much more seasoned, that much more prepared to handle that position, and therefore come into 2023 with high expectations and not let that get in the way of her ability to play her best tennis. That hasn't been the case. So obviously there's probably a mental thing here when you look at a player who twice in her career has risen into the top 5 only to kind of dramatically turn the other way and not be able to sustain it. When that happens twice, I think it's fair to wonder if there's some systematic psychological things that are kind of off. But in terms of what I'm seeing in her tennis, it is a radical way to play. And a lot of the times I'm sitting there questioning whether or not it needs to be. I mean, so the improvement that Garcia ultimately made, first and foremost, was she improved her first serve, became one of the elite servers in women's tennis. Statistically, that has not changed. She is still serving at an elite level, even in 2023, where she's won a lot less matches. And then the second thing she's done was she's always been a very offensively minded player. I want to play offense. But for a while, she was trying to do it from behind the baseline. And then she started, instead of doing it from behind the baseline, well, how about I take the ball early and I use my skills at net? It seemed like she won the Roland Garros doubles title with Kiki Mladenovic, and then she realized, look, I'm this elite volleyer. I can do it in singles. I can use it in singles. And instead of taking a ton of risk off the ground, I can maintain my aggression by just taking time away and coming forward. And that's how I will be this all-out aggressive player instead of being this really erratic power baseliner who hits like super flat and just can't really control the ball. Right? So that was the improvement from last year. But now, I think on serve, it's still working. She's still holding serve. I think the return has started to really hurt her. She's not making returns, and she will not move back. So the elite servers hurt her. But more than anything, here is what I'm seeing that doesn't make any sense to me. She can't cover the court at all because of her movement and her positioning. Like, she can't cover the court at all because when she hits a return that isn't perfect and that goes into the middle or that's a little bit short, she's so far inside the court, she can't recover back behind the baseline. So not only is she not the fastest player in the world, but she's also like 3 feet inside the baseline as her opponent, steps inside the court to hit an aggressive +1. She's practically in no man's land. She's so out of position to defend defensively on such a regular basis that I am quite certain that there is nobody who is easier to finish off when you get a short ball than Caroline Garcia in the entire top 50 on the WTA Tour. There's no way there's anybody who's easier to finish off. So basically, whenever she drops a ball short, whenever she hits a bad shot, there's basically no coming back because she will not recognize a weak outgoing ball and respond by giving herself some time and moving back. It's literally like there's like a fire pit behind the baseline. She refuses to move behind the baseline. And I would look at it and it's like, Caroline, can we become a dynamic mover? Can we still take time away? Still come forward a lot? But instead of making it so that is the only thing you know how to do and that is the only speed, can we make it so that when you give up a weaker ball, you are still able to actually move backwards in the point? Can we make it so that you allow yourself to move backwards in the point and then hope to get back into the point or make your opponent play some extra balls so that maybe later on you have a chance to move up yet again? I mean, look, the best players, they move up and they move back and they move up and they move back. The movement is dynamic. Garcia, a lot of people criticize her for only having offense. That's not really I guess that's the criticism, but I think you have to go deeper than that. It's okay to be a hyper offensive player, but if you refuse to assume a defensively a reasonable court positioning for covering the court, I just think you're fighting an uphill battle. You're making it so that you can't cover the court at all. Like, you're in huge trouble if you hit a bad shot or if your opponent hits a great shot, it's over. Like, Garcia will never recover from that because of her court position. That's my take right now on Caroline. All right, let's do two more. This one is from member Squaro. With no more players using serve and volley, Medvedev and his deep return position have emerged. Now players should learn serve and volley to beat him. What are the consequences for the meta? What kind of new player could emerge? I mean, look, the ideal is that you can do it all. A similar thing happened in mixed martial arts where, early on, and yeah, tennis is a little bit older than MMA, no doubt about it. So it's further along in the evolution. But in MMA, it was, you had fighters who were really good at one thing, fighters who were really good at the other thing, fighters who were really good at that thing. But more and more as the sport has developed, you have to be good at everything. This is kind of that case where it's not like back in the day where some players were serve and volley, some players were baseliners. Now I think, and then kind of everything kind of shifted to the baseline. Now we're seeing a certain return position that is kind of bringing back serve and volley. Look, your ideal is Carlos Alcaraz. And by the way, like the big three, they all got themselves to a point, at least by the end of their careers, where it was really a vast array of the things they could do. I don't think we've ever seen a player be able to do so many things at 20 years old like Alcaraz can do. And people get mad when I talk about Carlos Alcaraz like this because his accomplishments have not yet caught up to that, the kind of lofty statements that I think his game deserves, right? But I don't care because I just got to be honest about what I'm seeing. And I always have been with Alcaraz, and I will continue to be. That's the ideal. You got to be able to do everything. That's the new kind of player, right? It's just Alcaraz. Next one is from Gavellum123, also a member, and we'll end on this one. What do you make of Schwartzman's poor results? Not just recently, but this whole season. It seems like he just isn't there for playing at tour level. Do you think he would benefit from dropping down and playing some challengers? I don't know what he would benefit from. I mean, look, the serve this year, or just Schwartzman's ability to hold serve this year has been really rough sledding. Really rough. Here's what I'll say, and it's not an analysis. This is not an analysis of his tennis this year because unfortunately, I don't have one. I haven't really been able to. I'm sure if I watched every match he played and I compared it with last year, or even better yet, compared it with 2020, I would have a better answer for you in terms of what's happening in his actual tennis. But I can't say I'm all that shocked about what has happened here just because, not that Schwartzman's not a great player, but man, it's so physical. It is so hard to do what he did for a couple years here where I think generally, this is what we see. Players who play that style, it can come crashing down pretty quickly when he's physically not able to do it any longer. So, look, I don't think Schwartzman has been as consistent. I don't think he has been as tough. I mean, it's just to be a top 10 player, which he only was for 1 year, right? Let's be clear about it, which is why I scoff at the comparisons to Ferrer, because he just wasn't like that. He's not on that level. To be a top 10 player, as Schwartzman was for a bit, without a serve is insanely hard. And I just think sometimes we see the finish line for a guy like Schwartzman. It can be pretty dramatic because he doesn't have weapons that's going to keep him in it. Like if Diego falls off even 5% physically, the results are going to kind of go off the cliff. And I guess that's what we've seen here. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see if maybe at some point we can see a resurgence. But yeah, I mean, we see RBA slipping this year. We've seen Carreño Busta injured. We'll see how he does on the way back. The grinders do not have it easy when they get older. They just don't. So yeah, I mean, sorry if I don't have a great detailed assessment of Schwartzman, but that sometimes happens when players are losing first round a lot. Sometimes the result of that is I end up not seeing them much. I think there have been some better results recently for Diego. I think didn't he grab a nice win recently? Let's see. Yeah, he beat Van Asch in Shanghai. So that's a start. He pushed Zverev to 3 in Beijing. That's pretty good. Other than that, not much doing. UTS. He played well in UTS in Hamburg. I watched it. All right. We'll end it on that. Thanks, everybody who commented. Leave a rating and review if you're listening on Apple Podcasts. Numbers have been really good on Apple. I've been really happy about that. Leave a rating and a review. Or if you're listening on Spotify, same thing. Video is on Spotify, just so you know. So if you want a way to watch this show off of YouTube, you can also do so on Spotify. That's all I got. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.